Welcome to Weekly Wins and Losses. My name is James Hepner, former real estate entrepreneur turned self-development hacker, coach, and fulfillment strategist. Each week, we bring you a thought to wrestle with that'll help you live fully alive and gain more life. Real life is made up of both wins and losses. Both were designed for your good. That's basic reality. Without facing and learning how to embrace your losses for greater gain, you miss out. You leave 50% of your life experience on the table. So with that, let's begin the show.
With inflation rates rising, interest rates shooting up, gas prices skyrocketing, and the continued global unrest, it's easy to find what's wrong in the world. Tony Robbins says, what's wrong in the world is always available, but so is what's right. Instead of trying to hope and wish the world into a better place, it's time to make the most important decision any of us can ever make, and that is to invest in yourself. Now, you know I've always stood with you as you've navigated the uncertainties of life's reality. However, it's now time that I step up and take decisive action to walk alongside your current life journey in a new way, and that is by making myself available to you in a radical, new way during these challenging times. So for a limited time, I'm inviting you to a 45-minute strategic business life consultation. No charge and no strings attached. This consultation is where you'll regain the reins of your life. It's where you'll gain clarity on exactly why you're stuck, moving you directly towards your optimal outcomes. And I'll be honest, and I'm humbled to say, however, my clients' generous reflection of their time spent with me reveals the truth. The skills they've been able to master in such a short period of time by engaging in our one-on-one strategic sessions have changed their lives in so many ways. This is the only invitation that I can fathom that will put my skin in the game of your life in such a way that will allow us, you and I, to address your specific needs with precision and excellence. 45 minutes, just you and I, together on one call to get you headed in the direction you crave most. Here's what my clients report after one-on-one sessions with me. A decrease in indecision. An increase in clarity, confidence, and courage. An increase to fully capitalize on what's directly before them. An increase in the impact that they crave to have at work, on their families, and inside their communities. A decrease in pain and suffering. A decrease in anxiety. So, if you want to move beyond old stories, get clear in where you're headed so that you can shake your world, then here's a rich opportunity for you today. One-on-one strategic business life consultation with me. One-on-one 45 minutes. So, if you want to maximize this opportunity, if you want to reclaim and regain your inner power, then you're going to want to slow things down during these challenging times. And how? Well, engaging and getting right with your life and making a life plan. I should let you know that this offer will fill up and expire. Click in the show notes to get your 45-minute strategic business life consultation. No charge, no strings attached. May this episode, number 29, maximizing wake-up calls, change your everyday life.
Well, welcome, friends. Today, I want to introduce you to a gentleman by the name of Vince Kramer. Vince is a former, I think you are a former pilot. You're no longer a pilot, true?
Well, you're always a pilot, but I am a former commercial airline pilot, yes.
There you go. Military veteran, transformational trainer and mentor, and clear conscious channel. Vince Kramer brings a unique experience to the world of transformation and purpose-driven growth. His past experience in a stereotypical macho field brings a more integrated perspective to the softer field of personal growth, not often seen. Thank the Lord for that. As a speaker, teacher, guide, and best-selling author of Mastering the Art of Success, with none other than Mr. Doctor, almost a doctor, but Jack Canfield, Vince's distinct combination of experience, education, and research helps him develop powerful talks, workshops, and online training in finding happiness and success by living life by their design. A co-founder of Imagine Miracles, he passionately believes everyone is unique and the creator of their own life. And it's his desire to inspire and empower, women, men, organizations, and families to find success and happiness by designing and creating a life fueled by their desire. Wow, that was a lot of goodness. I can't believe I got through that after about 13 stumbles, but there you go. Perhaps a miracle.
That's who I am. And thank you so much, James, for having me today. I'm excited to find out where our conversation goes.
Isn't that the mystery and the goodness of all of it, right? I don't know about you, and I've gotten to know you a little bit, and I think one of the things that I appreciate most about you is you're one of these individuals that clearly has a desire based on what you just said. That's congruent with how I know you, and you're like, actually, I have some ideas on where I think this might go, but I'm just curious to see where we can take this together. And so, audience members here, whoever's listening, you guys are meeting someone who's very open. And so what I like about him, he challenges me like do my other guests, but he does it from a different level. And perhaps, he has some life experience. Like I haven't been in the military and I haven't flown a commercial plane, right? So he has some of these things that requires of him to be in a deeply curious state. So talk to me, Vince, when you say you're genuinely curious. What's the agenda that you would like to talk about, but you're like, well, actually, I'm going to just let it be. What's the agenda that comes up for you? And I'm going to give you honesty about what I want to talk about, my agenda, but I'm going to also let that go. But what firstly is your agenda? If you lean into like that humanist, the agenda that is coming to the surface, you think, I like to do that, but you're going, actually, let's just see what happens.
Well, if I chose an agenda right now in this moment, I would choose to share why I'm here, because I think it's so important for each and every one of us to know why we're here. And really, that's what I'm being called to help people with, is to uncover why they're here. Our world's in a bit of a mess right now, but it's in a bit of a mess from a place of change. It's a bit of a mess from a place of transformation. All this chaos that we see going on out there, and the divisiveness and the fear, I think that's just the society as a whole and our planet as a whole moving to a new paradigm, a new place of being and showing up in the world. And because we're moving into that paradigm, I think more and more people are being called to really find out why they're here, and to at least move on the journey to start living that. So that's what I would want to talk about.
I love it. And so the agenda that I would want to talk about, it's like I've seen this now. Every time I'm on a call with you, a visual call, I see these posters behind you, Imagine Miracles. And so my agenda often is, so why did you choose those images? But at the same time, I want to let that go because I want to be curious about why we're really here today. And oftentimes I decipher my worldview through what I see. And but one of the things, why don't we just jump right in, that really has me fascinated. Each and every time you and I talk, you talk about these distinct things called wake ups in your life. And I know one of the things, I think, was it the last time you and I talked? You don't remember, but you're saying something about, I wasn't always willing to look at the wake up calls in my life. And for some reason, perhaps being in the military was just not fun. I don't know what it was, but sooner or later, you had this overarching desire to let your wake ups just do something for you. What was it? What was it? And what could you maybe list 2 or 3 wake up calls in your life?
Definitely. First of all, if I may, I believe we have wake ups because I believe we came into this world knowing how we were supposed to show up, knowing the difference that we were going to make. But for us, if we came in at this high vibrational energy, knowing what we're supposed to do, it's kind of difficult for us to develop all our gifts and talents that we need to live that purpose or live that mission. So we had to forget, so we could have all these wonderful and not so wonderful and sometimes terrible experiences where we learned about different aspects of life, where we develop gifts like being able to ask questions, or to be able to talk to somebody in a way that helps bring them into an understanding. We all have these different gifts, and they're a unique combination. So we had to forget to develop these and to experience these sometimes not so great circumstances. And then we have to awaken. And how do we wake up to who we are? We have to have these little signs here and there. So at Imagine Miracles, we have two kinds of wake ups, either conscious ones or crisis ones.
Mm.
A conscious one is I'll give you an example of me. I learned how to be a man from my grandfather and a couple of other influential people in my life. And it was all about competition, being better than, achieving, attacking. And I learned really well from him. And I was very successful. My military career was successful. I've held directorate level jobs at the corporate level, commercial airline pilot for 29 years. So a lot of great things happened in my life. And it was all about, okay, how do I do the next thing? What's the next thing that's going to make me happy? What should I get next? And I stopped competing against everybody else and started competing against me. So, but all the way through that, James, there was something missing. And that was a conscious wake up, knowing that there was something missing in my life. And I just didn't pay attention to that. I also knew, I'm following all the rules. Why am I not as happy as I'm supposed to be? That was another conscious wake up call that I really didn't pay attention to. So what I believe is we're given these conscious wake ups and we pay attention. And if we don't, they get a little stronger and a little stronger and a little stronger until we finally pay attention to the wake up. So those conscious wake ups move into crisis wake ups. My first crisis wake up was 9/11. I lost a good friend that day. In the crash in Pennsylvania. I actually flew that flight a week prior. So it could have been me if it was 9/4 instead of 9/11. But Grandpa taught me well, I'm better than that, move on. Nothing's going to happen to you. So I just went on with my life like nothing happened. I mean, it took a while, took longer than a lot of the population to move beyond that. But then in 2003, United Airlines went bankrupt. I lost my pension. I lost 60% of my pay. I lost job security in a lot of ways. And the other thing that I lost was belief and loyalty. But my dad taught me well in this case. My job to support my family. You better have a retirement when you're done working. So I just followed Dad's rules, and I went out and I bought some pretzel stores. That was going to be my retirement. I was working 95-hour weeks between the two jobs. At that time, I was teaching at United instead of flying the line. But so 95-hour weeks and plug ahead, compete, get it, make sure the money, the bank accounts building. And then because of those pretzel stores and being away from home and working 95 hours a week, my ex-wife had an affair. And with that affair, decided that she didn't want to be married anymore. And I came home one day to her crying just uncontrollably, and her telling me she no longer wanted to be married. And that was the wake up call that finally got my attention to say, okay, I have got to figure out what's missing in my life.
Well, that's a pretty intense wake up call. The one thing that I can appreciate deeply, firstly, sorry that your friend, the one that flew that flight on 9/11, is no longer here. I'm sure you still feel that. And so, the world, we just want to say the never ending apology. Pain doesn't go away, and suffering to some degree, we can work with it, but pain is pain, and pain tends to lead us to wake up. Right. And so one of the things that I hear you saying about waking up, I think, and this is back to my point, the thing I like most. You said, and these were your words, because of my 95-hour work week, my ex-wife had an affair. And what's fascinating about that sentence, there's extreme ownership. Like some people, let's be honest, some people tend to think that the good life is looking to see who to shame and blame. Other people tend to realize that there's something in it. There's something that we can do about it. We're not totally helpless and useless. There's actually something, if we would be honest, if we would look at the pie of responsibility, there's a sliver, if even a sliver. The Ukrainian crisis, for example, I don't want to get into the weeds on that. However, what creates a problem like this? What's the undertow? You begin to fight for the sliver of the responsibility pie. And so what I'm hearing you say is not identifying with the fact that you're responsible for her affair because she did what she did. However, you're looking at going, what did I do to stimulate this action? And so, right, to wake up consciously to the 95-hour, what did you discover after the conscious wake up and then the crisis wake up? What would you say that cycled back and you become now conscious on another level? Because often these things don't end. These things, they keep going. And one of the questions that I had for you, and you answered already, how do you go from an airplane pilot to a transformational guy? How do you do this? And how does this, people go, how does this happen? Like I was once this and now I'm that. For him, how did that, and you hear it, like in 9/11, he was a pilot during times. How did he end up here? And to a large degree, I think you've answered that question. But if you could look at it now and you'd be like, well, consciousness, wake up, and then crisis, wake up. And then how is that actually breeding you for the next, like, how is it cycling? How are you waking up to something deeper in a deeper, just on like another conscious level?
Well, I think that's what wake ups are all about, is just to make us aware so we can take our level of consciousness, raise our level of consciousness, and not only raise the level, hold on to it, because we're only as conscious as what we hold on to at the time. A couple of things I'd like to share there, because you brought up so many great things. First of all, as I moved into different wake ups, because I've had several wake ups along the way, one of the things that happened was my current wife, who at the time, a year or so after the divorce, we kind of were brought back together. We had met each other 10 years earlier. She started bringing some spirituality into my life, and spirituality in a way that I didn't know I was going to or was willing to accept, James. But as she brought it into my life, I was willing to question, because after the divorce, I told myself, I'm going to try whatever puts itself in front of me and then decide, does it work for me or not? But I'm not going to shun anything, or I'm not going to push it away. So as she was talking about spirituality, and I wasn't necessarily in agreement, I started looking to science to, in a way, prove her wrong. I think that was what my ego wanted to do, is prove her wrong. Not my personality, but my sub-personalities wanted to prove her wrong. But the deeper I got into science, the more I realized that science and spirituality walk hand in hand. And a lot of what she was sharing was explained to me by understanding science, especially the quantum physics world. So now my level of awareness is coming up. And one of the things that we learned through quantum physics is that we're the creator of our reality. As the observer, our reality is a reflection of our perception of what's happening in our lives, which means, okay, I'm a co-creator in everything that I experience. And now I started looking at, okay, where was my co-creation in this? Just like you said, what's my co-creation in Ukraine? Well, my co-creation in Ukraine, from my perspective at this point, is to realize that we still have people in this world that want to control other people. And in wanting to control other people, we're not allowing people to be who they are and live who they are fully.
Mm.
So I started looking for my co-creations in everything. My co-creation in the affair, my co-creation in the divorce. But also then as I started getting deeper into the science and really starting accepting what I'm being called to do in this world, I started to realize that everything that's happened in our world, if I was a co-creator of it, I created it for a specific reason. And to go back and start finding why I created each one of these circumstances in my life. And instead of just finding out why, what was the gift that I gave myself in that creation? And now I start seeing the gift in everything that's happened in my life, even when I felt like I was a victim. And trust me, I felt like I was a victim from when I found out my wife no longer wanted to be married. But once I uncovered that there was a gift in it, now I could live life a different way. But the most exciting thing I learned was I actually changed my past by changing the perception and by finding the gift.
Well, and I love that. They say that that memories aren't true because memories are malleable. Memories are only about as good as your current desire to bring them current. So when I was a child, I was sexually abused, right? And though it was horrible, but I don't live there anymore. And so I bring my current consciousness into that moment. And now, to be honest, the boy was my cousin. He was 16, I was 10. To be totally honest, to me, it's kind of dissolved because at the end of the day, instead of me going, how could it be? There's the victim. How could it be? Well, at 16, I've been through the libidinal stage of testosterone. I have some kids, 15 to 17. They have more energy. And so this boy who chose that action with me, he just had a lot of energy and he put it towards that. And so I love, and I want to just go a little deeper. And you said, and I think this happens every time you and I talk, we just go deeper, deeper. And one of the things that you brought up is science and spirituality, and how, you look at like the early church, or even like churches today, often like organized religion. I have no beefs against it, other than what I typically do with my men, with people that I work with, is I remove them from the orthodoxy of life. And so I bring them back into choice. And that's primarily what I do. I'm bringing back into making choice. And so instead of seeing threat wherever we go, and of course, anytime you see fear, anytime you make a decision from a place of fear, you think about when you're flying your plane, any decision, military, doesn't matter what it is, your pretzel stores, you're in a state of fear, you make a decision, it'll always be the wrong one. It'll always be a self-protectionist mechanism, and it won't work. But instead of having science and spirituality be at odds with one another, it's like what you're saying here when you started the call. Thanks for starting off. We're seeing what we can create here today. And so we're naturally in a stance of collaboration before we even begin. So imagine if the Orthodoxy Church and all churches, or just religion in general, could not see spirituality as a threat. Or sorry, would not see science as a threat. And if the science world would see the same, think about how much we would evolve forward. But you bring out this interesting dynamic when it's like at the heart of people's experience of life, or the desire of life, is the desire to embrace who they really are. And no matter what they do, they can't get away from the fact that they're autonomous human beings. And autonomous human beings, the opposite of living fully in that presence of being autonomous, is to control other people. And how do we control? Well, we throw out these darts of, I'm threatened when these things happen. I'm threatened. What you're coming across, you're bringing to the table, and I love this, when science and spirituality, when you're open to both of them. So the wake up call, consciously, you're like, I'm not going to be closed to things anymore. Like your second wife here, like you mentioned, right? You were in a stance of openness. You brought them together, and so they didn't threaten each other. You could hold them together and they could coexist, and you can listen to the narrative. And all of a sudden, you are the co-creator, is what you woke up to. And so now you're waking up to not consciousness to crisis again. You're going consciousness to something totally different. See, crisis is when you don't first see the but when you choose to see with an open mind. And now you get to be a co-creator. I was talking to my wife the other day, and she says, you know what the difference between feminine and masculine energy, and I like to hear your angle on this, but the feminine energy is a creator. So we all have feminine energy in us. There's some people that just live more in that, like typically, at least in this home and society, traditional partnerships, whatever it ends up being, the woman often has more of the feminine presence in her, and male, like I would identify as a male, have more of masculine. And so she says the woman is the creator and the man is the doer. And so to think about, even in your stance, when you say I get to co-create, it's that tender nurturing. That's what if you're creating does. So if you're in your feminine element, you're creating. And so I see, like, and I don't want to reference this, but you have that spark or that star beside your imagined miracles. And it's like the bursting of, like, holy smokes, there was once nothing here, and now there's something brand new here. And there's a purpose that I've been brought here for. All of my journeys, all of my wounds, all of the great ups and downs and everything was all designed for a purpose, so that not that I could hide in, everything under a hill, but that I could be here in this moment, and I can bring it, and I can literally stand beside the creator, the energy of all energy. And I could be like, this is what I bring to the table. I love this so much, right? Being in that stance of, like, what's your angle on some of what I was just saying here? And there's a lot that I just threw at you, but what's an angle that you
Yeah, you threw a whole lot out there. So and so true, and so important for everybody to just let these concepts be absorbed, because they're in us. We already know it. We're tapped into the all-knowingness of the universe, of God, but whatever anybody wants to call it, we're tapped into it. And we know it. Sometimes we just have to be remembered. And that's the loveliness, if you will, of these podcasts, and being able to talk about this and have conversation and community about it. I think the thing that really got me up in my chair and said, yes, you got to talk about that, is one of the things that quantum physics teaches us is we don't live in an either or world, or either or universe. We live in an and both universe. So there really is no right or wrong, because what one person's right is could be somebody else's wrong. And our inner truths, what we hold as true, how we show up in the world, where we live in the world, it all coexists. And we have to realize it all coexists. And whatever's happening on the outside world, James, is really happening on the inside world. So that means everything coexists inside of us. And we're in a world of hurt if we can't understand that we have to learn to love each and every part of us. Because if some of those things that we see on the outside world we're not too happy with, and we are everything, then we've got some judgments on ourselves, and we really can't move fully into who we are, because there's parts of us we don't like. And I just had a great conversation with somebody earlier about that. Really, the name of the game is love, right? That's the highest vibration in the universe, is love. And for us to truly be able to unconditionally love, we have to unconditionally love ourselves. And that's a tough thing to do if we live in an either or world. And it's also really tough when I can't admit that you might be right also. Yes, I'm right in what I think and what I feel, because it's right for me. But if you think something different or believe something different, and I come from an either or world, that means I have to think you're wrong. And if I go to the energy of thinking you're wrong, now the diversity that happens between us is really keeping both of us from living who we are. And the world needs us. So we can't come from that place where we're shutting ourselves down and we're shutting others down. Like you said, When we come from fear, we're in the lowest vibration. And when we're in the lowest vibration, we are going to make decisions and make creations that are at a low vibration, which don't support us.
Mhm. Isn't it fascinating how, in life, and there's many different ways of living, but I hear this sometimes, right? People who go through tough times and then they use term like, and good on them. I mean, you get through and then you use certain narrative and languaging to express, right? And so, but the languaging that I hear so often is they say, well, and I got through it in spite of, is what they say. And it always kind of, I hear what they're saying, but I think to myself, where are they making room to be fully human again? Because when I think about what you were saying about unconditional love means the things that we don't want to love about ourselves, we will. The old things that we say are not needed, the old things are not wanted, apparently, the old things that were once unsafe. All personal growth comes when we can bring new, fresh want to the old unwanted, new, fresh need to the old unneeded, and bring safety to what we once perceived as being dangerous. This whole forgetting, I think to forget, and I'm putting together some of the concepts you put forward here, forget the either or so that we can remember the both and that we've always been. We've actually always been the both and. And when we start playing there, I think we begin to wake up with a source of all love, a God, however you want to language this, but that doesn't make junk, that can use all things, pain included. It has a purpose. It is to be shared. It is to be included. In this economy, this economy, this God or love economy, whatever you want to call it, there's no waste ever. And when everything can be utilized and nothing needs to be eliminated, my friend, think about this, right? Like, what manner of unconditional love can we actually be about ourselves instead of just bringing it to others? We cannot bring a gift to another unless we can do it ourselves. So we have to unconditionally love that all that who we have been and all who we are, that it all belongs. And it's this and that. And now all of a sudden, like you say, we go into conversation and somebody has a different belief. Yeah. We've done that work in us. So we onboard these differences in us and we hold them. We don't say, oh, it's in spite of, meaning we never want to do that again. It's like, actually, it's because of this. So we start looking for the tension. We start walking towards tension. We start having the richest of experiences, and boom, perhaps that's how the miracle comes, right? We walk towards, like an airplane, right? It doesn't take off with wind. It goes against. Why, right? This is like an overused concept, but yeah, beautiful. How do we find our best quality questions and answers through connection? How do we do that?
So the connection, explain to me what you're calling a connection.
Well, here's the thing, right? Like, I know one of the things you work on within your work specifically is finding our answers through connection. So everyone has a different view of connection, but I think we all kind of, well, I got to be careful because I don't know if it's a universal truth, but my perspective truth anyway would be to say connecting is saying, well, how does this paper connect with this pen? It's very different, but how? So I'm not saying does it, I'm saying how does it connect? So then I start saying, well, perhaps this goes on here, ink goes on paper. And so how do we find, and so I guess the way I language a question, how do we find the best quality or our highest quality questions and answers through connection? How do we do it? And you can answer it the way you like, or you can play with it the way you like. And if not, I can answer, or I can ask from another level, but through connection.
So I think connection as a whole, we have to understand that there is really one universal energy, which means we're part of that universal energy. We are that energy. The pen is, the paper is, So there is a connection there energetically, no matter what. We're really all here, and everything here is for the same purpose: the expansion of that energy.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say connection, it kind of goes back to what I shared a little while ago, James, that um, we all have, because we're part of this universal energy, we have access to all the knowledge that's out there. We have access to every answer of every question that's ever been asked. And energetically, we can tap into that. We just haven't been taught how. We forgot, we don't remember yet, but we can tap in. So as part of that universal energy, and this might push the audience a little bit, I truly believe that each and every one of us is a strand of that energy. We chose to come to this earth as a strand of that energy and to make a difference in this world, but also to expand that energy.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say we have all the answers through connection, if we are truly that strand of energy, we have access to higher frequencies of the energy of who and what we are. So I believe that we can tap into that non-physical part of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
that non-physical part that knows all the answers, that is connected to the whole, and knows how all the puzzle pieces are fitting together, and remembers why we came to Earth, and is helping us on that journey. And for as a clear conscious channel, I also believe that we all can tap into even higher frequencies of that energy stream. So if we have an answer to help us on our journey, and we can tap into that part of us, or even a higher frequency that can help us on that journey, that's the connection I think that we all have, and we all should be working towards.
It's a fascinating dimension. One of the things that comes to mind is, and of course, recently, Elon Musk, by the way, I think it was today, he just announced that he is successfully going to be purchasing Twitter. And to each, to themselves and how they view it. One of the things that I'm always curious, and by the way, just as a disclaimer, I do appreciate Elon. I learned a long time ago that when somebody takes courageous action, you need to look for the good of what they're doing, because to initiate action takes something. And so are they initiating perfect action? Well, that's the lowest standard. Perfection is the lowest standard, meaning at the heart of anything good, it lies at the core always a problem. At the heart of anything good, at the core always lies a problem. So the best thing to, if you want to focus on perfection, it's you're going to make sure there's going to be a problem at the core of it that can be evolved. Because if it can't be evolved, you are basically saying, I am God, and you will not co-create with me. And so you're going to be very alone, probably. It's not going to help you much, right? But what I'm very fascinated on is how people hold power. And so the word power is a very relevant word for me. It's one that I love to pick at the optics and kind of poke at the structure. And I want to see, so when I think Elon purchasing Twitter, I want to see, not through judgment, but typically people don't realize that they get caught in aligning with things or owning things so that they can solve for their own physical needs, right? And so when I think about connection, who was it? I think, was it Tony Robbins? It may have been Tony. People were quizzing him on what was his X factor, and they were just going deeper. What is it? And then on one of a short little talk, he just said, it just comes down to love. And I know you people probably think it's like a mushy word and whatever it is, but he goes, and the interesting thing is, as I became aware, when he talked about love, and then he drilled into deeper love, like the deepest of which is empathy, and the caringness he has, solving for things beyond what he has reference for, beyond his own physical needs, beyond his own lifetime. There's something there that was so playful, so energetic, because you couldn't pin this down. He couldn't say exactly what it was because he was describing it, but he's leaving open the door wide for interpretation, because it literally is a force that as soon as you say it, it's kind of like it's here now. And then when you say it, it's gone. Like, have you ever realized anything good, if you say it, it's, you typically ruined it. You don't say it. It's like somebody says, I'm a loving presence. I'm like, oh, you shouldn't have told me that. Because now I'm looking at it going, why would somebody try to be convincing me of this? Because if they aren't, they just live that. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Just live it through your behavior, right? So part of this whole connection piece, I often think, and I like to hear what is your definition? If you could just drill down a little bit, like how would you ultimately define what is connection? Because for me, connection, I resonate with, and perhaps this is what I needed most, is to get out of myself. And so it's empathetic way and solving not just for what I want, but for what actually needs to be, not just so that I will have enough in my life, but that there will be something well beyond. And I don't have to say, did it work or not before I die? That's not the point. If I seed it into regenerative behavior, then I need to trust and be good with that. But yeah, go ahead. Connection. What is it for you?
Well, there are so many different definitions of connection in so many different ways. So the connection, the connection I would like to talk about, because there's physical connection,
Yeah,
we're
please.
multidimensional, right? So
Mhm.
there's multidimensional in every dimension that we are. There's connection of some sort. Um, what I would like to share connection wise is truly that connection to that knowing part,
Mm, mm,
to because we have some questions that are extremely important in us truly living what I would say our purpose. And I believe our purpose is three parts. It's the energy of who we are, the essence of who we are, and how we show up. You know what it's like. You walk in a room and you feel people. You feel their energy because of that
mm,
energy force that we all just put out into the world. It's
mhm,
it's how we create, because what we put out we're actually pulling back to us. So it's the energy, but it's also all these gifts and talents that we developed as part of our purpose, because that's how we deliver. And then there's the mission, the why, if you will, which we call your divine intent. So the questions that we need to ask to fully understand the reason we're here, because I believe if Tony Robbins was an excellent example, and I'm sorry I'm jumping around, but it's really important.
please.
Tony Robbins is an excellent example. Tony Robbins is living his divine intent. He's living the reason that he came here. And because he is living it and he's sharing all of who he is getting fulfilled as he makes the difference that he's meant to make.
Mm,
So
mm,
it's truly him helping each and every person become more of who they are and see themselves for who they are, that he's getting fulfilled also, which means now he can share even more and even more.
mm,
So Tony's got the answers to his question of who am I, why, what do I have to offer, and why am I here? Those are the three big important questions for all of us, because once we uncover those, if we start living that way, we're going to show up not doing what Tony Robbins does, but show up in the way that he accomplishes it, because he's living why he's here. He's at the high vibration. He's attracting the people that need him, and he's making a difference in their life. That's my definition of miracle, James. But through an
mm.
act of love, sharing your gifts and talents in a way that others can share theirs. And that's exactly what Tony's doing. So we've got these three big questions. Well, you don't have my answers. And you can help me find my answers, but at what level do we help each other find the answers? Do we help each other find a level at
Mm,
a mental level,
mm,
which is only one of our dimensions? Do we
mm,
find it at an emotional level? Do we find it at a heart level? And that's where I say we all have the capability through, if you want to say through meditation. There's several different ways that we use in our program. How do you tap into that knowing part of you
mhm,
to get the answers? Because that's when you're going to be the best James, or that's when you're going to be the best Vince, when you tap into your answers and you start living your life your way. So that's connection I'm talking about. Some people call it the angels. Some people call it God in their prayers to God and getting the answers. Some people call it their higher self. Some people call it their soul. It's just a connection to that knowing part, and truly learning before you forgot what the answers were.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting, and so if you don't mind, I was just, and I have a pen and paper, as you saw. So as I listen, I take copious notes typically. I do the best I can because I make neuro associations, and then so that I can focus here, so I can forget what I'm thinking of. I just write things down that I come back to later if it's appropriate, right? And so one of the things and I want to put this through your filter, I want to see what your perspective is. A few years ago, I was laying in my sauna, and you may be able to relate, listener, Vince may be able to relate as well. But sometimes we go through stages of life when there's so much that we've taken in. Like, we may have woken up to a conscious reality, and then crisis hits. And so we onboard so much learning. And the learning, we know, only once it actually transforms us, helps us anything. And transformation is when we physically embody it and it actually shifts into and becomes us. So there's actually action that happens. And so as I was laying in the sauna, I was becoming very cognizantly aware and deeply concerned, to be honest, that I was going to be forgetting what I learned. I'd gone through some crisis and I was thinking I may forget. And I was really holding on to not wanting to forget. And the more I held on, the worse it got. Like, it literally felt like my head was going to explode. And I had the window open, just a crack. It was early morning. We live in Vancouver, BC, right by the ocean here. And spring had just sprung. And all of a sudden I heard a bird, and it was just chirping. And I turned all of my music and podcasts off. I was just contemplating, and this awareness, this heaviness, like I'm going to forget, came. And the bird, all it did was make one distinct sound. Chirp, chirp. And I thought, what's interesting? I've heard this bird before. It may not have been the same one, but this bird does the same thing every single day. Not anxiously concerned about how he or she is going to reinvent itself so it'll be relevant. It was very okay with making that distinct sound. And what was fascinating, and my grandpa died from dementia or Alzheimer's, one of the two. I forget exactly how that went. But there was an invitation for me to connect with something. And so one of my fears has always been, and so even as somebody who focuses on health and biohacking and different things, I like to say that some of the supplements I take or routines that I follow with make sure my brain's healthy, it's not anxious striving, but taking me back there. And even now I'm stress testing, checking in with myself, how much of this is actually being done because you're afraid of something, right? And so I was listening to what was happening. And again, so just to back it up a little bit, what I just finished saying, I was beginning to feel like the more I was resisting forgetting and the fearing of forgetting, the worse I was getting. And I heard this bird chirp, and it was just like one singular sound. And all I remember thinking of is, what's the singular thing I'm thinking of now? And the only thing I was thinking about was forgetting. And what's interesting is I thought to myself, I need to connect with forgetting. And I need to make that okay first. So my question to you is, would you say there's a stage before? So you talk about the knowing. So connection is returning back to the knowing of the answer. Would you say before the connection, that is the knowing that gets you the answer, you actually connect with the unknown? Meaning you're actually empathizing with a bit of the problem first. And we know, and this is just on, and there's many teachers in my life, but Tony's one of them for sure. He always talks about we have to move beyond just empathizing with our problem. We have to move towards empathizing with our possibility. So the unknown is typically empathizing with the problem. But then once we do that, once that's safe within us, then we begin and we shift towards now it's safe for me to want to know again, and that is empathizing with possibilities, because empathizing with your problem will hold you at a certain spot. But you must take it there. And I guess, so just going to pare it really down, really, really simple. I had an experience And the experience was I feared I was going to forget and all this stuff. And then I actually made that safe. I connected with making that safe. And then all of a sudden came this newness of what you're talking about. So how does that resonate with you? Does that, how does that fall through your filter, or how would you read that?
Well, I agree with it 100%. But I think it can show up in different stages. First of all, if there's a belief, or there's an underlying rule, if you will, that is holding you in the space of being afraid of forgetting. So let's just say, I'm making this up. I'm not saying that this is you in any way, but let's just say,
but it might be. You don't know.
The only way I can be successful is to remember everything that I know, or have learned.
Well, that was pretty much what was going on in my brain at the time. Yeah.
So if you're holding on to that, then that's how you're going to show up, especially when you're not in the present moment, when you're living from the subconscious, which scientists tell us we do up to 90% of our life. We're living from the subconscious. So that can show or raise its ugly head, and you can make decisions based on that when you're not consciously in the present moment. So it can actually, so a belief like that or a fear like that can hold you from moving forward completely. Other people can have flashes of that belief, and in a time where they're not having that belief, they can move forward. They can grow, they can expand, and they can learn more, or move, hold on to what they're having instead of losing it, believing they're going to lose it, which in turn will create losing it. If you put all your attention on it, sooner or later, you'll lose that information. But then if that, it would be what I would call a shadow. If that shadow is still there, if that belief is still there, somewhere on your journey, you're going to have to look at it. You're going to have to come to terms with it, like you said. And yes, accept it, understand it, have empathy for yourself that it's there, but then also realize that that belief was either given to you or chosen by you at a time where you could not possibly understand all the circumstances. So sooner or later, we're going to have to look at that fear, because it will raise its ugly head somewhere down the road to hold us back. As for the unknown, holy cow, we need to become intimately familiar with the unknown, because that's where a new life is. If we stay in the known, we're going to stay right where we are and experience the same things. So it's understanding that the unknown is where it is all at. And what I hope people can find is they find that love for themselves. They're able to tear that wall down where they're not being completely authentic and shining their light out into the world. Because if you're shining your light into the world and you open the door to the unknown, you just lit up that first part of that room. And now you're stepping into a place where you can feel more comfortable. You can feel safe enough to take the next step into the darkness, and the next step. And the darkness is just something that we don't know, we haven't experienced yet. And that's where our true, shall I say, wonder and magic of who we are is, in that unknown.
Isn't that so nicely? You put that so well. Love is the first thing that gives us eyes to see, shines light into the darkness, just enough for us to take a step forward. It gives us the certainty that we require to take confident, proper action forward. It's that first, speaking of darkness, right? Like the good book, the Bible. Some people reference the Bible as the good book. The Bible will talk about, so before, for example, in Genesis, there's a story about apparently God created heavens and the earth, and it was good, right? And so he talks about once there was only darkness, and it went from darkness to light, and it went from no humans to humans. And so we tend to read the story through a certain narrative. We tend to think, well, see, humans made it better, right? Because it once was like a certain way. So if God said it was good with them, then perhaps before it wasn't good. And so what's fascinating, it's like the human ego. It's like the human apparently made it all good. And then we forget that every other thing that came before the human, it didn't say that it was bad. It was a then and now. So there's darkness. So right now on this screen, I see you and I, and surrounding the darkness is a beautiful black frame. This is on Zoom, but it's a black frame. I'm wearing black. You got some black stuff in your, what I'm saying is the darkness. People often go, we want to illuminate the darkness. The only thing is, before there was ever what some people, some orthodoxy religious people would say, the good news is when darkness was gone. Yet you and I are nicely suggesting that really what we want is, we actually want what's directly in front of us. If it's dark, then it's dark. If it's light, then it's light. But it's like the brightness of who we are. We don't need to convert the dark into light even, because when we open the door, like you just said, it isn't like we see all the answers everywhere in the world. It's like we just see a little bit into that space. It's just enough light for a step, you know? So, oh man, that is just, yeah, no, that is so nice. How would you reconcile then at the heart of everything, how would you reconcile the unknown with the known? Because a lot of people, they be about, to be an achiever, I must need to know certain things, which arguably is true. So again, we're not fighting for right or wrong. We're just kind of debating here. The only thing is, it seems to me that roughly at about age 40 for most people, life has already taught them a few things, shown them that there will just be death when death comes, meaning it won't work out the way you thought in the business world, exactly when you thought in the relational world, Hollywood, happily ever after, sure, but that's the beginning when you give the rose. It's not the end. That's when the stuff comes, right? How would you reconcile these two things, the knowing and the unknown? Because oftentimes what I have found, at least in my journey, and I really enjoy somebody like Richard Rohr. Richard Rohr is a priest, Catholic priest, but he pokes at the structure. Not pokes at it to take it down, but just pokes at it to make it better. Question things. Let's create some questions and doubts so that our faith can grow. He makes the comment and the concept that the first half of our life, typically we base on answers, and the second half of life, we base more on questions. And so how would you reconcile that? Because when you talk about connection and you talk answers, where do you leave room for questions, and how do questions affect the unknown, or just overall? So unknown questions, how do you wrestle with those two things?
Well, like I shared earlier, I truly believe that we're here to grow and expand. So if there isn't that question, answer, question, answer, question, answer in our lives, there is no expansion.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
And if we're not expanding, then why are we here? So that's a question. But the interesting thing about the age that you shared, so I want to share a couple things here. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That self-actualization, if we're open and willing, happens right around 40 years old. And as we step into that self-actualization, we start to realize who we are at a very deep level, or a deeper level, and we start understanding connection. And when I say connection that way, I'm not talking about getting our guidance. I'm talking about connection in if I do something or say something, I affect you and I affect others. I mean, that's just the way energy works. So we start to realize that there's this connection. We start to realize that there's more. And we start to realize that we want to leave some type of legacy. And I think we're moving as a population and as a society more into, I realize my legacy is something that I do for others and something I do for the world, not I left this bundle of money type of thing. Legacy is moving more towards, how can I make a difference? And just as a quick side note, that's my desire. Everybody leaves their heart legacy before they die so they can see what they left
Mhm.
and how they made the difference. I
Mm,
don't want that change to come after you die. I want you
mm,
to experience the magnificence of it. So, and if you look at our website, you'll see this depiction above the triangle, which would be Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's a triangle that's tip to tip to
mm,
Maslow's. And what I found is that's where, okay, we're self actualized now, and we realize that we're here for service.
mm,
We're here to
mm,
truly make a difference.
mm,
And there's a couple more levels, if you will, that I see above that. It's called Barrett's method. This
mm,
triangle that I'm talking about, and it's our level of bringing our legacy to the world. It's our
mm,
legacy of serving. It's our way of, oh, this is why I developed all these gifts and talents. Now let me share them in the world in a way that truly makes a difference. So I think that's our growth and expansion, and that's where we
mm,
step into. Now, bringing the known and the unknown together, James, I think we've just learned, and we've learned by passing things down over and over again, and we've learned by the society we're in, or the organizations that we change, to give meaning to certain things.
mm,
And the meanings we give to them, there are meanings. There's nothing wrong with them,
mm,
but the meaning is based a lot on our belief system. The meaning is based on what we chose or who we chose to surround ourselves with.
mm,
So I'm a firm believer that we can give different meanings to things. And I'm a firm believer, and I know for a fact beliefs aren't real.
mhm.
Beliefs are just something that we chose to hold on to from our experiences or what other people told us.
Well, they're just
So,
constructs that hold us to a certain, and they help us achieve certain solutions in our current
right.
world. But if we want different solutions, we got to up level our beliefs, right?
Right. And there's some beliefs that we're going to hold on to forever because
Mhm,
they're empowering to us, and they're in alignment with who we are. But there's a whole bunch of beliefs out there that have been holding us back. And like you said, all we have to do is change the construct and move them
mhm,
into to supporting beliefs.
mhm,
So with beliefs being not real and but still can hold us back, and us giving meaning to things,
mhm,
then if we can change the meaning, we can truly bring the known and the unknown together,
mhm.
and
And perhaps that's, and
not
not
fear
fear.
either.
And that's perhaps exactly like you described in a beautiful way, those two triangles, Maslow's law, like, and then the tip of that triangle meeting the other, the inverted, the upside down triangle. It's that, like you say, typically at 40 or so, there's this wake up, this ultimate spot. And it's interesting. And for some people, it can be very unsettling. For others, it can just be decentering. And decentering is actually where we get all our strength from. You know, if you're out of balance, that's where you get your strength from. So a lot of people, though, it makes them feel shaky, and it questions their unshakability factor. And so they work so hard for this unshakable. For me personally, where I'm at in my life is I am I am constantly allowing the movements to happen, and so I'm unshakable within the movements that are, so I let them be. I don't control them. And so the bottom triangle for me, first part of my life, is we're still trying to control our outcomes to our preferred desires. And all of a sudden we hit that spot when we realize it's not all going to work out just the way we think. And then we get either just decentered, or for some people, they almost lose their way because there's an inviting for something brand new. And in my opinion, based on what you're saying, I'm just kind of playing with what you're doing here as well. But it's like we once solve for, I'm either or. So to your point earlier, the first triangle was we're either right or we're wrong. We know or we don't. And one is good and one is bad. And so we've labeled that. So we're constantly at odds. We're at conflict. But if we do that transition well, second stage of life well, we move from saying this is crisis, meaning there's warring beliefs going on. How can the knowing and the unknown together serve each other, and I don't have to do anything about it. It's just there, and we let it just be. And we let it be, it's almost like they fuel off each other. And so we get to just observe. That's a life-giving energy. And so what comes to mind for me is the top part, or the top triangle, the way you describe it. There's many ways of making that possible, but I'm just reducing, not because I'm a reductionist by nature, but that top triangle can happen. So for simplistic term, it can happen if we decide to include things versus excluding. I see a lot of people who they just build that bottom triangle and then they hit that decentering place, and then they're trying to go to something different, but then a lot of them, they give up and they just go grow, 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 gone. And then they just build in their kingdom. Like they're buying another 15 pretzel shops. And there's nothing wrong if you do, by the way, which by the way, I was going to ask you, and you can answer later on, how's your pretzel shops doing? But yeah. To include, not to exclude, that knowing and the unknown can coexist at the exact same time. It's not right or wrong. They're not good or bad. This is actually the state we want to be in. Because in my opinion, to me, if I connect with the highest state of what life is, unless life is alive, I mean, that's almost a rhetorical, like an oxymoron, like it's weird. Unless life is alive, what does it even mean? Unless things are moving, they're not living. And so connectedness is it takes a few things so that there can be connection. So connection is always alive when it's connecting, but it has to be moving and evolving. And it's got to keep going, and it's got to keep growing. And so maybe at some point in time we'll have to do a podcast if we live long enough. You know how they say we might live forever. I don't know if this is true, but then we might need to put another triangle above this triangle, unless maybe this is just the way to be, meaning, and you know, if you don't mind, I'm just going to say something really quick. I used to think that God was a non-divided self. I used to think God knew all the answers. But then I think to myself, well, wait a minute, like you and I were talking about, we get to co-create with the ultimate source of love, God, whatever you want to call it. So if he has all the answers, then why would he have need of me? Maybe God, like me, is a divided self too. And divided not because it's right or wrong. Oh, I have to know now. Oh, I have to not know now. It's not like being torn, which one? But maybe it's a divided self that we finally get to enter into the presence of that divine state of who it is, who he, she, whatever it ends up being.
Could I throw out that maybe we're part of that divided self of God?
That's exactly what I was 100%.
Yeah, we're part of that divided self. I mean, so if you look at the fact that if you just look at the holistic world and the holographic, if you look at universal energy, or if you look at God as holographic, we're part of that divided self, but we're holographic, which means we are a reflection of the whole.
Yeah.
And in that reflection of the whole, I think that's the answer for this world, really, honestly. If we could see the reflection of the whole in each and every person, think how different the world would be. It would be huge. It would really be huge. One thing I want to share about you saying that, you know, some people continue to grow and continue to grow and continue to grow. A lot of it has to do with the rules that we've accepted for our society. It's because we've learned that that's the answer. Most people that continue to grow their riches and control their riches, they're looking for something, and they believe that they'll find that in continuously growing their world, their empire, or whatever. And they don't have, and society in many ways still forces this because of the way we, as a society, not each individual, but as a society, the way we look at it, they are the successful ones. They are the ones that are making this world work. And because they're continuously looking, what they're looking for is that inverted triangle. They're looking for what they're going to feel and what they're going to experience when they step into that inverted triangle. But we haven't done a good job letting people know that the inverted triangle is there and helping them step into it.
How do you think we can best not teach the inverted triangle? And the reason I preface it like that, oftentimes the best of things, when we say it, we destroy it.
Mhm.
It's like they say
How
God,
can
or
we best do it? Live it.
how, yeah, right.
I mean, that let's face it, and I believe myself to be a teacher, and I my gifts and talents were platform teaching. I taught people to fly. I taught people how to lead. I taught, and it was really tough for me to step into the understanding of it wasn't me teaching leadership. Teaching flying, that's a different story.
Mhm.
But for me to teach leadership, it wasn't me standing there telling them what leadership was all about. It was me giving the brain the information, but energetically sharing an example of being a leader, because it's by example that people learn, grow, and uh, have the desire to move further into what they're looking for. It's really example. So I agree with you 100%. Unfortunately, I feel that we're still in this place where we have to keep the brain busy.
Mm.
And we have to give
Yeah,
the brain
something to do.
information.
Yep.
Yeah, when we have to give the brain information from time to time too. So when there's a decision to be made, and we're in that place of being in the 3D world, and we pull the file cabinet open, there's something that at least relates, because that's how the brain works, right? The brain constantly is looking for something close to the experience that's happening right now, so it can say, okay, this is what this experience is all about. So when we give the brain knowledge, we're at least putting things in the file drawer where it says, okay, I've never experienced this before, but I do remember this being said. So, okay, I might be willing to accept this. And then in the willingness, maybe willing to accept it, you step into living it. And now you've given the file cabinet an example of you living it. So I think knowledge is important. I think it's extremely important. But I also believe, don't stand on the stage and teach something that you're not living, because if you do, you're really not giving the people what they need to be what they're looking for.
You just triggered a thought for me, in the sense of um, the people that seek me out and find me for one-on-one coaching or group, or speaker talk, right? Me on stage kind of thing. I find my audience, the ones that are drawn, and let me be honest, I guess we're in alignment with values. I make quick work of making it very clear that if they learn something from me, it's just what they're maybe picking up from what I'm saying, or how my body and whatever I'm doing to communicate, my language and tone. It's just connecting them to an experience of life that they have had and they're remembering. So it is not that, I am not the Jesus in their life. And as a matter of fact, if I find that anyone, for example, one-on-one coaching, if they want to see that I am their solution, not life is their solution, I find that exit door real quick. I make that very, very apparent, right? And so, no, I love what you're saying, right? And it makes complete sense. I don't know if I shared this with you, but the other day, actually, what was it, maybe 8, 9 months ago, I was having this journey with a specific part of my health, and I just realized that I think I was trying to fix, manage, or control my health. And I thought, wait a minute, my body doesn't lie. My body can't lie. So why am I trying to inform it? It's trying to inform me. It's trying to teach me. And it's like, okay, therein lies the, oh God, I got this kind of thing. Oh, I got my health. And, whatever that is, looks at it going, oh, that's really, really interesting. You think you got it? Actually, I'm going to tell you. And it's like life will do this. I think naturally, and what I'm hearing you and I talk about, really, if we want to pare this down, make it really simple, I don't know if you would agree with this, but one of the things that comes to mind for me is if we would just become better observers of nature and what happens there, things happen and nature doesn't complain. Nature just goes, I have here what I have. Like I'm a tree in the forest and I had a big tree that fell onto me. I'm feeling a little damaged. Or the tree, one falls beside the other. The one that fell doesn't complain all over again. It just says, well, I'll just be what this is. I'll go into worms. And it seems to me that it's actually a lot simpler. And to your point on the brain likes to debate things, which I think is really unique, but we have to give it things to debate that actually lead to a good outcome. And I think oftentimes, if we let our brain be informed with what we're already being told, there's a whole level beyond giving meaning, which you and I know. You give meaning to things, that's great until a certain point. And now the inverted triangle, I think you stop bringing so much meaning and you let life teach you instead of always having to narrate for life.
So you're going to take me all the way back to the first part of our conversation here,
That's why I
because
did this. Yeah, because
I
we're almost
think
at the end of my podcast. Yeah.
I think it's amazingly important. You talked about the masculine and feminine.
Mhm.
I think we all have the divine masculine in us. I think we all have the divine feminine in us. And it's us bringing the divine masculine and the divine feminine together in a way that supports our mission.
Mhm.
So when we're talking about the brain, let's face it, our greatest decisions come from our heart or our gut. Our heart or gut knows the right decision to make. That's the feminine. That's the creator. That's the one that okay, this is in alignment with us. This is the direction we should go. This feels right. And we forget when we bring the masculine into it, when we bring the brain into it, we forget the brain's the builder and not the connector or the creator.
There you go.
So if we can take our knowingness, our understanding, our connection to what we know, our higher self or whatever, we can take that knowledge and then take it to the brain to build. That's when we create the life that we really are here to create. It's when we take it to the brain and let the brain be part of the creation. Now it starts and what's our brain, especially in the US, what's our brain programmed to do? Our brain's not programmed to find out how to make it work. Our brain's programmed to tell us why it won't.
Yeah.
So it's bringing that, okay, I'm bringing the feminine creator information to the masculine builder. Okay, builder, make it happen. Don't tell me how to make it happen or tell me why it won't work. Make it happen. And our brain can do that. It's so amazing.
Well, and it's really fascinating to me because this just sprang up in me. So at the beginning, we're like, we're not quite sure what this will do for both of us, where we're taking this. But one of the things that just woke up for me, so wake up calls on that point, right, is the brain is looking for the problem. Typically, that's what the brain looks for. Something that comes to heart for me is one of the things that I always utilize when I feel stuck. Is I ask myself the question, what's the truth here? What's the truth? And I don't get weird about it as in like, I know the truth for all things. That's not the idea. But it's just, if I bring higher resonance to all this, what's the truth here? What's the, so you rise it, not so much perspective truth, you go more universal truth. What's really the truth here? And so I think the truth is anything you try has the potential of not working. So your brain isn't off necessarily. Your brain just giving you one side. So therein lies, stand guard at the door of the mind. The mind isn't the enemy. If we're not careful, then we talk about, why are we even on this earth? I wish it wasn't here. I wish I was in heaven. That's like, wait a minute, we're created for a purpose and we're created for here and now. So how is it so? And our brain tends to be a large part. And if we're disconnected from our brain, we're vegetables and we die. So like you say, this is actually the actualizer here, or like the thing that makes it all click. We just have to remember that when we only hear it's not going to work, that we go, well, the truth is, you're right. It might not work. And it's maybe just setting me up for a real experience. Like, if it doesn't, are you going to be okay? So see this, be empathetic for what it brings instead of being it's always a problem. So thanks for that. I really appreciate you just kind of open me up, even though it's funny sometimes we know these things, but then we have a new example and you just help shift a few things for me. That was nice. Thank you.
The exciting thing physiologically, there's thousands of brain cells in your heart. And there's thousands of brain cells in our gut. And our heart and gut's the only place where there's brain cells that there's not a limiter of reason. So our reasoning part of our brain is very important and very helpful, but it also can be very hindering.
That's remarkable. Wow. Well, we could go on forever. Perhaps we'll have to do another talk at some point in time, perhaps a part 2 or whatever that looks like. If you could leave us with, in your life, if you could just level into like flat out authenticity, like where do you struggle to connect with something that is directly in front of you? And it's just something current. Like, if you be honest, you'd be like, I'm here now, and I'm struggling to connect with this. It doesn't need to be a dystopic or a problem, or it's just, I don't know, perhaps you go, why do I always wear the same t-shirt? I don't know.
I struggle. I definitely have a calling, and I believe we all have a calling. And I think I shared with you in our conversation before, at 5 years old, I told my grandmother that I was here to help people love themselves so they could love others. And that calling won't let me go. And I struggle because it's not an easy message. I struggle because what I have to share with the world isn't as acceptable as, oh, if I social media market this way, things are going to work, or if I speak this way, people are going to want to hear me, or if I learn how to coach, people are going to want to be coached by me. The message that I'm bringing and the message I'm called to bring isn't going away, and I struggle sometimes with the message being hard or not being accepted as fast as I want it to be accepted.
If you could take this podcast, and you know how we talked about knowing and unknowing and inverted triangle and whatever we talked about, and maybe apply, in music, they have this thing where they talk about slow is smooth and smooth is fast. What I'm hearing you kind of lean into is, we know we have a limited time physically. For example, if I don't know if I want to play in that too deeply, but let's be honest, there might be a final ushering our body out of this world. And so you're saying, I have this calling and I'm really energetic towards it, and I don't want to be restless about it because that's not impactful. And nor am I, by the way, picking up that you're restless. But if you could take a moment, reflect on that and feel it, perhaps do with it as you wish, but imagine that you could just say something, communicate something in a way that you've never communicated before, to just clarify, not for anyone in the world, but for you. Give yourself the gift. What would that be? How would you say that to enter into a new place? See, this passion you have, this calling, it keeps calling you deeper and deeper. Like, everyone listening, we can all hear, you're just going deeper and deeper and deeper. Like, you can't let go of it. It's not letting you go. How would you bring that forward? If you want to take a minute or a few seconds to think about it, like, how would you experience something new on the inside of you right now?
Well, it's not something new, but it's something I share with others that maybe I need to listen to myself. And I'll share it to me instead of sharing it to the world right now.
Good job.
So I'll share with me that I'm unique. and I have a combination of gifts and talents that are truly meant to help others. And in that unique combination of gifts and talents, the people that are looking for them will find them because the world needs me.
Wow. It's profound. I don't know if I shared this with you, but my wife said to me the other day, so what you just said is you go, I will, maybe I need to hear this. I was sharing something with her and she said to me, but I said to her, it seems to me like this is no longer an issue for me in my life, issue or concern, or I need to talk about it or whatever, debate it. It's gone. Like, I don't know. It feels like it left me. It's no longer in my life. I'm good. And she was quiet. And then she said to me, it just seems like you finally heard what you were saying, or you're wanting to hear others, or you're wanting others to hear about what you're saying.
Mhm.
And I just kept talking. And also said, whoa, 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 back it up. What did you just say? Because it sounds to me like you finally heard yourself. So listeners, ask yourself the question, what are you hoping the world's going to hear about you? What manner of hoping do you not have to wait for anymore? What do you need to declare? What do you need to speak? What do you need to live? What do you need to just be? And what is it that you can do right now that will finally allow you the permission to exist that you're waiting for everybody else to give you? Perhaps you could just give yourself permission to exist, just like here, Mr. Vince Kramer has done. Hearing yourself, the power of hearing yourself. The most important, Tony Robbins, and again, we talk a lot about Tony today, but Tony Robbins says the most important opinion you have of anyone is that you have of yourself. Whether that's true or not, I happen to believe that it's the most impactful thing. Vince, if you could leave us with some final words of wisdom, and thank you for being my guest today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I was waiting for this podcast for quite some time. And so thank you so much. But if you could leave us with some final thoughts, if you had just a final few things to share with people, words of wisdom, what would it be?
It kind of is a reflection of what I just shared with myself. First of all, we are so special. We are truly a miracle. I gave the definition earlier. We truly are a miracle that the world needs, and there are no mistakes or coincidences in the universe. Quantum physics tells us that. Spirituality tells us that. You are here for a reason, and you're being called to that reason. And I know that when you live that reason, you'll understand why you chose to come to Earth.
And why do you think you'll understand? What do you think is going to happen for people if they start living it?
Because they're going to experience the high vibration. They're going to feel.
And what does that mean? Mm-hmm.
Well, the vibration of love. I mean, when I'm trying to,
what manner of
if everybody
stress
could close their eyes for just a second, and in closing your eyes, find that thing in life that you love the most. It might have been a puppy, it might have been a friend or whatever, and just picture yourself not seeing that thing or that person for quite a while. And then you walk into a room and that puppy or that person is there, and just feel with your eyes closed what your body would feel like in that experience of seeing that person and sharing that intimacy and that closeness again. That's what it feels like when you live on purpose.
Wow, I just did that. My wife and kid just went for a walk before this podcast. My little puppy, it's a little Maltipoo, was whining, and I was consoling it and laughing, going, "Oh, you silly puppy. What you just did brought back in my remembrance. There was a dog back on the farm. His name is Buster. He died when I was about 8 or 9 years old, a German Shepherd, a beautiful dog. You just helped me to connect that experience with what I had today. Incredible, incredible experience. Wow, so good. Vince, where can people find you? Your work?
I'm going to make it real easy for everybody. if you go to imaginemiracles.com/weekly wins, one word, weekly wins, there's an opportunity to learn more about Mary and I. I've got a couple free gifts, those questions I told you that you need to ask. It's called the Your Unique Purpose Formula. It's there for you to download. The chapter that I wrote with Jack Canfield's book is there for you to download, and an opportunity to just learn more about channeling, learn more about what Mary and I are bringing to the world.
That's wonderful. Wow, you made that so simple. It's interesting when you said weekly wins. It strikes me, perhaps this is one of the reasons, we choose these words and language and we bump into each other. Of course, my platform is weekly wins and losses.
That's
So
why it's called Weekly Wins. This is your page for your listeners.
there you go. That's beautiful. There you go, listeners. Go to this page, have a look, interact with it, please, please. And thank you for being so generous here, Vince, and participating and interacting and building and co-creating. And listeners, I'm so thankful that you co-created something within your life as you're listening to this. Take a moment, reflect back, and go to Vince's website, go to some of his, look up some of his work, and just let it, poke you. Let it, help you move from where you are to where you want to be. So thanks again, Vince. So much appreciate it.
Thank you, James. It was great to be with you. Wonderful conversation.
I sincerely hope you enjoyed that little interplay. If you liked the podcast episode, let us know by subscribing, leaving a little review, and sharing with a friend as you feel appropriate. Honestly, the guests that I host on this show, they love the feedback, and I personally love knowing that you're listening. So whether you choose to work with me as a guide or not, and that's your guide or not, that's simply great. Why, you ask? Well, because you're obviously one of those that's listened to the very end of this podcast. You've clearly made a decision to invest in yourself. And honestly, how isn't that just the best news? So if you decide you need and or want to get unstuck by activating your creativity and inner resources, if you want to see things clearly, if you want to get to your next level, if you want to live with vibrant energy and passion, simply go to www.jameshepner.com for one-on-one coaching, and or go to www.weeklywinsandlosses.com for the no-charge Friday noon Global Community Weekly Wins and Losses video call. So again, I thank you for investing in yourself. See you next time. My sincere hope is that you've gleaned a few nuggets for yourself and a few pieces of interest that help you move forward in your unique journey. So again, I thank you for joining me here. This is James Hepner clocking out. Until next time, peace out, rock up.